Hi there. In this lecture we see an amazingly complex game of Mikhail Tal against Alexander Koblents in 1957 Riga. So let's see this game. e4 from Tal. We have a Sicilian defense, knight f3, d6, d4, c takes d4, knight takes d4, knight f6, knight c3, and now the classical variation, knight c6. We have the Richter-Rauser variation, bishop g5. So this is the most popular move. e6 is played, and now queen d2 is played. One of the things about this move, if g6, white could double the pawns, so it's discouraging g6. And after e6, queen d2, white is prepared now to castle queenside. We have black castling, knight b3, queen b6, f3, a6, and now g4. At the moment this looks like a very nice attacking formation. So bishop e3, queen c7, h4, b5, g5, the knight goes to d7, and now g6. This helps open up the lines against the black king. If a move like queen f2, knight ce5, this position, black can get a reasonable game. It looks about even. So, okay. So g6, h takes, and now h5, g takes h5, rook takes h5, knight f6. Here, there are actually a number of options. Let's have a look at them. Knight ce5, white can play knight d4, and here white has a strong attack. For example, bishop h3, looking at that e6 and f7 structure, this is very, very dangerous. For example, knight takes e6, here bishop takes e6 check, and this position leaves black struggling to defend. Black's kind of just getting smashed on the king side. For example, like this, with g7 now under pressure. This is just a fictional line which shows the dangers in the position. So white ends up overall being much better here and even winning material potentially. There are a number of huge, complex tactical variations in this game. So be prepared. Knight f6 was played though, rook h1, d5. Here, if knight e5, queen h2 is simple and strong, threatening queen h8 checkmate. Knight g6 to defend h8, king b1. This position, again, this bishop h3 plays an instrumental role sometimes in helping demolish the black position. So for example, f4, d4, we have bishop takes e6, undermining the g6 knight. And here, for example, this is just very, very strong. For example, like this is checkmate. So we get some patterns at least for how to undermine black structure with bishop h3 here in the variations. So d5 was played. This keeps an eye out for the h2 square. We have e5, trying to float, kind of disconnect that line, that diagonal. So here, if white just accepts the exchange of queens, then this is going to be fine for black. Black's just going to undermine white's center and be better actually in this position. So something has to be done about this h2 square. So e5, we have knight takes e5. If queen takes e5, then bishop f4 and bishop d3, and where is the black queen actually fleeing to? Knight e4 to defend the queen. This is no good. Threatening checkmate, it's just crushing. If knight e8, then we have queen h2 without the queens coming off, and this is very dangerous. This is very, very strong. And we have knight after bishop d3, a big threat of rook h8 check. So for example, b4, rook h8 check, just as an example. So black tries knight takes e5. We have bishop f4, which is actually a mistake. It seems as though white should be playing queen h2 here. So for example, king f8, check. This position is very, very interesting and intense. It looks as though, for example, bishop c5 check here. This is just one of many fictional examples. Queen h7. And white has a strong position here. Black is kind of tied up. But bishop f4 was played. We have bishop d6. So the bishop is sometimes a liability here on f4. Queen h2, king f8. yeah, this is if knight d3 check had been played, white sidesteps this, doesn't take on d3 to allow. That would be a disaster, allowing bishop takes f4 check. White sidesteps with king b1, and there's no time to take on f4. There's a mate threat here, so this is much better for white. Black's losing there. So, okay, we have king f8, queen h8 check, and now knight g8. This is actually, it seems a mistake. King e7 might have been better, to evict the queen immediately, or to ask for queen takes g7. For example, here, this knight d3 check, you can see that bishop's a liability, and it rebounds horribly. Bishop takes f4, because otherwise, if white takes, bishop takes f4 is winning the queen. So this is not with check, at least, but black has the big advantage here. So also, if queen h4, knight d3 check, this position is also going to be okay for black. If queen h3, then this position is, it turns out, this is going to be okay. Again, this knight d3 mechanism features in many variations where black's going to be fine. But knight g8 was played, rook h7, f5, and now bishop h6. So the bishop stops being a liability and is trying to plough in and use that pin. And this gets to be a very picturesque position now. Bishop takes b5, complete chaos on the board. Rook f7. This is actually a mistake, funny enough. If a takes, knight takes, this position, there's knight g6, and it turns out getting the queens off might actually be an interesting idea. For example, this situation, which is ridiculous to calculate, ends up being better for black. At the end of the day there, black has the bishop pair and a fine position. So yes, it seems as though a takes would have been interesting with the idea of knight g6. This does seem a little bit silly to have the queen on h8 as though it's trappable. If knight g6 there, white should be okay with knight d4, funny enough. So for example, knight takes h8, knight takes, white is actually okay in this line. For example here, this is a small edge for white. So anyway, rook f7 was played, rook g1, rook a7, and now knight d4. This is an inaccuracy, it seems. It seems here white can actually play bishop takes a6. I know it's very strange tactical position. If bishop takes a6, that weakens e6, and there's knight d4, which now, if black reacts like this, then there's this, hitting queen and rook, and trying to take away defense of g7 mathematically, white can crash through on g7. So yes, it's funny stuff going on here, indeed. And if rook takes a6, rook takes g7, again, mathematically superior, crashing through, and winning material here now. So that was with check, and winning that e5 knight with check, and this is just crushing. So okay, knight d4 was an inaccuracy. Yeah, it's funny enough. It's not easy to find bishop takes a6. What a move, I dare. So anyway, knight g4 is played. Here, I mean, this is just getting crazy. If rook b7, knight takes f5, e takes, knight takes d5, and say this situation where white tries to break through on g7, there's knight d3 check, king b1, bishop e6, but the thing is, rook takes b7, leaves white crushing black here because it's check. So, okay, if a5, knight takes f5, knight takes d5, this is also kind of crashing through. Look at this, the pressure on g8. These absolute pins are remarkable here. And white's just crushing it here. If bishop c5, rook h takes g7, this is also kind of very nice, but it's only slightly better for white. So anyway, knight g4, we have f takes, bishop e5, knight c6. Here, knight f3 was interesting. If g takes, knight takes e5 is better for white. And if a takes b5, knight h4, This situation with knight g6 check is also kind of fascinating. White is getting a big advantage there. If bishop f6, g takes f5, e takes, knight takes d5. Yeah, this is crazy stuff, but it seems as though white is getting the better of it. It's a major tactical chaos, but white's getting the better of it. So knight c6 is played, bishop takes c3. If g takes h6, knight takes e5. That's better for white. Because I mean, it's not that easy to explain a lot of these positions, but yeah, okay. So if a takes b5, knight takes e5, queen takes e5, rook f1. This situation, it looks as though after g5, queen g6, check, knight b5. Here, bishop takes b4. This is a big advantage for white here. So anyway, bishop takes c3 was played. Bishop e3, trying to go back on this diagonal, so c5 to f8 diagonal. d4, cutting that bishop. If bishop f6, as an example here, bishop c5 check, queen takes g8 check. Queen takes f8 check is possible, with the bishop supporting the queen. And here this is knight e5 is double check and mate. So d4 is played. The rook goes to h1. So as though there's a threat of queen takes and rook h8. So if a takes, queen takes, and then rook h8 is checkmate. So rook d7 is played. And now bishop g5, which is actually a mistake, funny enough. So why is this a mistake? Apparently, in this position, g takes f5 would be the way to go. So if a takes, f takes e6, queen takes g8, for example. So again, it's like a mating thing. If king takes, there's rook h8 is mate. The pawn's covering f7. So this is just crushing. It looks as though there's a major attack here. We're going to be winning the queen at some point, or winning material horribly like this. Rook takes d7. For check and taking everything out. So anyway, so it does seem as though g takes was the best. If we look at this line again, or rather not, let's not. So g takes was the best. Okay, so we have 32 a takes b3. If queen g3, f takes, queen takes e3. This is fascinating though. Queen takes e6. There's check here, and rook takes g7. So rook takes g7. Knight takes a7 is check. A takes, queen takes g7. So white has a big advantage here. If e takes f5, queen takes g8 check. King takes. Bishop c4 check. King f8. Rook h8 is checkmate. So yes, the computers think g takes f5 would have been the winning move for Mikhail Tal in this mega complex game. But, okay, bishop g5 was played, and now a takes, so black should be actually equal here in theory. Rook 1 to h6. I know this looks crazy as well. d3 is the big mistake black makes here. Black should have played bishop takes b2 check, and here queen takes c6. So for example here, rook f6, g takes, bishop h6, there's rook g7, bishop takes g7, king e7, bishop takes f6, double check, king d6, rook takes a7, knight takes f6, queen takes f6, black ends up having a perpetual. How comes black missed that? Okay. If queen takes c6, rook f6 check, g takes, bishop h6 check, rook g7, bishop takes g7, king e7, and this should be even. How did black miss this? So anyway, d3, we have b takes c3, d2 check, king d1, queen takes c6, rook f6 check, rook f7. Here, if g takes, bishop h6 check, rook g7, bishop takes g7 check, king e7, bishop takes f6 check, double check, so the king has to move. King d6, bishop e5 check, king c5, bishop d4 check, king c4, bishop takes a7. If check here, king takes d2, and here white ends up with a big advantage. Fair enough. If king e8, queen takes g8 check, here queen f8 is checkmate. So okay, rook f7. But now, guess what ends the game here? So white's play, and win, what would you play here? Okay, queen takes g7 check, yeah, this ends the game. If king e8, rook takes f7, mopping up things, and black only has some spike checks, you know, this would be a desperate check, yeah, extremely desperate. But white is threatening things like rook f8, checkmate. So this is just desperate, and it's absolutely winning for white in the end there. So yeah, these training games with Koblents, I mean, they're the kind of training games of Mikhail Tal. They're absolutely mental. I really hated analysing this game a long time ago, but given I had already a lot of analysis I could tweak for you, I thought I should give you an idea of that. I don't expect anyone to remember any of the analysis at all. It's one of the most complex games of Mikhail Tal, and it is one of the more celebrated games of Mikhail Tal. Just from the, you know, if we just appreciate the aesthetics of what's going on, this kind of mathematical balance of attackers and defenders and all the pins that resulted, it's just one of those absolutely crazy games which is kind of horrific to try and analyse. Sometimes a lot of books just leave this game out. A lot of classic books have left this game out. It's just too much to bear. I think I can see it can lead to confusion and just chaos. I mean, it's just an incomprehensible game, basically. It makes me think, you know, chess maybe is best for just computers, some of these mega complex games, but you know, the computer seems to think there were some mistakes from both sides. Okay, so we'll just leave it at the final end position. From an opening theory perspective, though, yeah, the Richter rouser seems a lot of fun. Just to go back to the opening, this bishop g5. This is the most popular move, the Richter rouser against the classical knight c6 move. So I wouldn't say this is a model game. It's like, probably you could call it the most complex model game one could possibly find against the classical variation from the magician from Riga. So if you want to check out somewhat less complex games in general, check out the Tal course, by the way. I tried to pick on the relatively shorter wins. You can see that some of Tal's games are just completely crazy. And there's no accident. You know, he basically used complexity as a weapon. He said as much. You know, he said about leading opponents to a deep dark forest, you know, where the path out was only narrow enough for one. He just basically used complexity as a weapon. And it's also kind of a weapon against future analysts of his games, just being terrified, basically, of analysing these kind of games. So we can see the Sicilian defence is, you know, some of the variations are just hugely tactical, especially if you're Mikhail Tal. Okay, thanks very much. Hi there. Thanks for getting to the end of the YouTube video. If you would like to see other Mikhail Tal games, I actually have an amazing course for Mikhail Tal, which is currently at 4.9 with over 400 students. You can check this out from the Kingscrusher TV page. So Chess Strategy and Tactics, Mikhail Tal's amazing games. You can check out some free preview videos as well here. If you do expand all sections, you can see the preview links to get some free previews. So I hope you do check out this course index and the free previews. So I really had a thrilling time actually checking out Mikhail Tal's games. So yeah, the YouTube video here you saw was just a sample from this course. I hope you check it out. Okay, thanks so much. Oh, by the way, comments, questions, likes, shares, all appreciated. And if you did get to this, you know, part of the video, please do leave some sort of comment like Tal fan. Okay, thanks again.